Venice rises on an archipelago of small islands separated from each other by important networks of canals that have undergone such transformations throughout the centuries as to alter the ancient configuration of the city. Venice, city of water, chosen by its first inhabitants because of its inaccessibility to invaders, constitutes a unity of culture, art, and civilization. With its magnificent palaces, religious monuments, splendor and refinement, Venice is an invaluable symbol of the perfect synthesis between man and nature. One of the first sights that visitors see on arrival at Venice's central train station, Venezia Santa Lucia, is the Scalzi Bridge, which provides a grand entrance to the ancient city of Venice. One of only 4 bridges that cross Venice's Grand Canal, the Scalzi Bridge takes its name from the nearby Chiesa dei Scalzi, or Church of the Discalced Carmelites. The Chiesa dei Scalzi, also known as Santa Maria di Nazareth, dates from the beginning of the 18th century and is the work of Baldassare Longhena, an important architect of the Venetian Baroque. A trip along the Grand Canal, called the Canalazzo by Venetians, is an excellent way to admire Venice's grandeur and beauty. The section of the Grand Canal between the train station and the Rialto Bridge offers scenic views of century-old palaces. The glory of Venice and its architecture is a magnificent sight. Gracious, crumbling, or renovated buildings and ornate aristocratic homes line both sides of the canal. Here, the Church of St. Eustatius, locally known as San Stay, presents one of the most theatrical facades of all the churches facing onto the Grand Canal, because of both the generous space in front of the building and the elaborate marble facade that characterizes this Baroque church. The Grand Canal, with its magnificent edifices dating for the most part between the 12th and 18th centuries, is a showcase of the glory days of the Venetian Republic, bearing witness to the city's former wealth and the art and architecture it fostered. Created for a city without roads, architecture in Venice evolved in different ways from that of other European cities. Since visitors usually arrived by boat, the facade facing the canal was given lavish architectural treatment, while the side facing inward was considerably less ornate. Palazzos were often referred to as ca, which is short for casa or house. The name often reflected the owner of the house and how they felt the house should be regarded. While the palazzos' facades changed over time, the interiors remained remarkably consistent. Emblematic of Venice's singularity, this great road of water is the most beautiful street in Venice. Gliding along the Grand Canal, one is surrounded by the most opulent architecture, like the impressive and beautiful Gothic palace Ca' d'Oro, which was originally covered in gold leaf, vermilion, and ultramarine decoration. The palace reveals Moorish influence in its roof and sinuous pointed arches. The square of the fish market opens onto the Grand Canal with a broad view of the palaces on the opposite side. The Rialto fish market, together with the fruit and vegetable market located next to it, represents the true heart of the city. The Rialto fish market is comprised of dozens of stalls set up beneath two buildings. Thousands of Venetians flock there during the week to do their regular shopping, as do hundreds of tourists who come to admire this colorful and animated locale. A stroll through the fish market offers a lesson in the incredible variety of seafood typical of Venice, where the daily fish haul is an essential part of the preparation of the local cuisine. The fish sold at the Rialto market is brought from wholesalers at the seafood market near the Troncheto Island. These fish, crustaceans, and mollusks come from Venice's lagoon, the Adriatic Sea, and even the Atlantic Ocean. Near the markets and the Rialto Bridge stands a Romanesque church of St. James. This ancient church dominates the Rialto market with its clock, characteristic sundial on its main facade, small walled belfry, and original Gothic porch, the only example left in the city, embellished with exquisite capitals. The splendor of the Grand Canal creates an absolutely unforgettable atmosphere. To glide along the canal by gondola is the most enjoyable way to take a journey through Venetian history. The Rialto is the biggest, oldest, and most famous bridge spanning Venice's Grand Canal. The Rialto Bridge's 8-meter arch was designed to allow for passage of galleys, and the massive structure was built on some 12,000 wooden pilings that still support the bridge more than 400 years later. With the construction of the bridge, Venetians were able to transform an urban necessity into an opportunity to further beautify an already magnificent city. When Venice was a maritime power that navigated and traded throughout a good portion of the modern world, big cargo ships coming from all over the Mediterranean stopped here in order to unload and sell their merchandise wholesale. Venetians gathered here to buy silk and spices from the Orient, or trade with metal and textile merchants from Lombardy and Florence, together with traders from other parts of Italy and across the Alps. Today, the Rialto Bridge is one of the city's most visited tourist sites. The Fenice Theater, built by a group of box holders at the end of the 18th century, immediately became the official theater of the Venetian aristocracy, thanks to its elegant architectural and decorative appearance. Its name, which means phoenix, refers to the fact that though it burned to the ground several times throughout its history, it has always risen again, more magnificent than ever. Venice, gateway to the Orient, is one of the few cities in the world that can truly be described as unique. In addition to its one-of-a-kind natural features, the city boasts monuments of rare splendor, built over an extraordinarily long period of time. Baroque churches can often be more than a little overwhelming in the profusion of their decoration, but the Church of St. Moses, with its elaborately sculptured facade, is truly astonishing. Venice is not only an open-air museum, it is a city that links its history to modernity. Venice is back on the international map, hosting a long list of shows, exhibitions, and happenings, all connected with contemporary art, architecture, and film. As a center for contemporary art, the former monumental port of the city, Punta della Dogana, presents a permanent exhibition of works from the François Pinault collection. Triangular in shape, the Punta della Dogana separates the Grand Canal from the Giudecca Canal. Near the Punta della Dogana, the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute, commonly known simply as La Salute, is one of Venice's largest churches and has the status of a minor basilica. The church is a vast octagonal building built on a platform made of 100,000 wooden piles. Constructed of Istrian stone and Marmarino plaster, it is full of Marian symbolism, with its great dome representing the Virgin's crown. In a city like Venice, the waterways have always been used for transportation of goods and people. The gondola, with its excellent maneuverability and speed, was, till the arrival of motorized means, the boat most suitable for moving people around the city. This unique boat was used to move from one place to another within the city, as well as to make the short journey to the nearest islands. Visitors to the city can experience the pleasure of exploring the canals while reclining in a comfortable and silent boat. Some gondolas are used for tourists visiting the city. Others are used to cross the canals, the so-called da parada or ferry gondolas, while yet others are used for races between gondoliers. Today, about 400 gondolas are in active service, down from an estimated 8 to 10,000 in the 17th and 18th centuries. Gondoliers must be licensed members of a guild and are easily recognizable by their black pants, striped shirts, and straw hats. In the artisans' Venice, gondolas have been constructed, repaired, and cleaned since the 17th century in front of an unusual wooden chalet, just like those of the Cadore, the mountainous region from which many of Venice's workers came. The gondola is a unique and fascinating boat with a history and terminology all its own. Handmade of 8 different kinds of wood, each gondola is composed of 280 parts. Built in a squero, the Venetian term for a shipyard, each gondola is asymmetrical in shape, with a complicated oarlock called a forcola, and an ornamental ferro on its front, which serves as a counterweight for the gondolier standing near the stern. Venice is also unique in terms of urban territory. The system by which the city is crossed has its own nomenclature. Street names were given according to the particular function they had in the past, such as Calle dei Fabbri or Blacksmith Street, or because of a structural characteristic. Every bridge offers a different glimpse of the city, a particular viewpoint that frames a slice of history. The houses are set one against the other because there has always been little room, a determining factor in building development. Houses rise in height with narrow interior staircases. St. Mark's Square is the true heart of Venice, both because of its location on the banks of the Grand Canal and because of the number of beautiful historical monuments located there. The fascinating history of the Doge's palace, center and symbol of Venetian political activity, includes devastating fires that led to significant renovations and changes throughout the centuries. The palace is an example of Venetian Gothic civil architecture, with a facade covered in marble of various colors, pink marble from Verona and stone from Istria, forming small squares with rhombi and crosses. It was built in a grandiose layering of structural and ornamental elements, from its antique 14th century foundations to sumptuous Mannerist features to conspicuous Renaissance additions. The large window that looks out over the square is adorned with statues of the Doge Gritti, the winged lion, as well as statues of Mars and Neptune located above the balcony. Together with St. Mark's Basilica in the square, the Doge's palace forms part of one of the world's most famous settings. The Porta della Carta, the door of the paper, is a monumental entrance to the palace. St. Mark's Basilica is a monument of unique importance for the richness of its history, as well as the majesty of its facade and interior. St. Mark's Basilica majestically symbolizes the lagoon and enshrines the city's history. Possession of the saint's relics enabled the Republic to establish its authority. The entire length of the facade is divided by a balustered terrace. The tympanum at the center of the facade is adorned by 4 horses made of gilded bronze. Mosaics cover over 8,000 square meters of the walls, vaults, and cupolas of the basilica. Essentially Byzantine in architectural conception, the basilica finds in the mosaic its natural complement. The mosaic murals represent stories from the Bible, allegorical figures, scenes from the life of Christ, the Virgin Mary, St. Mark, and other saints. Each mosaic portal depicts specific moments in the story of the recovery of St. Mark's body. St. Mark's Basilica is like a splendid workshop where great Italian and European artists left their masterpieces over the centuries. The lord of the house is how Venetians affectionately refer to the bell tower of St. Mark's Square, dominating the piazza with its 98 meters in height, and itself dominated by its pointed roof surmounted by a golden angel. This bell tower serves as the beacon of Venice, commanding all of its other buildings. An elaborate facade with 3 big arcades of columns of composite order and classical inspiration. The small loggia is the least architectural of the works of Jacopo Sansovino and displays a sumptuous and colorful character so appropriate to its Venetian setting. The reliefs in marble with allegoric figurations represent the island of Heracleion, Venice under the form of justice, and the island of Cyprus. From the room at the top of the bell tower, a magnificent panorama can be had over the roofs of the Basilica, the Lagoon, and the city. St. Mark's Square has always played a central role in the life of the city, and today its monuments preserve Venice's historical memory. The Torre dell'Orologio, or clock tower, is of enormous importance in both practical and symbolic terms to the history of Venice. The clock indicates the hours, lunar phases, and the movement of the sun in the zodiac. The celebrated elements are the Virgin inside the niche and the Lion of St. Mark. The hour is rung by Moors, 2 bronze statues that beat a large bell with long hammers. Venice's Carnival is the most important and extravagant of the Venetian feasts, an enjoyable combination of tradition, spectacle, and history, set in a unique city. The city and its public squares, big and small, are transformed into an immense theater where any and every kind of mask can be seen on parade. Carnival has ancient origins in a pagan feast that celebrated the passage from winter into spring. Venice truly earned its reputation as the city of the Carnival in the 18th century, when thanks to its parties, shows, masks, theaters, and casino, it became a tourist destination for all of Europe, welcoming thousands of visitors eager to participate in its unique and lively atmosphere. Venice is home to a countless number of stores and workshops that produce and sell papier-mâché masks of every shape and color. From those inspired by Venetian costumes or the characters of the Commedia dell'arte, to those that take the shapes of animals or current figures. The Grand Canal divides the historical center into two parts, flowing for approximately 4 kilometers in the form of an upside-down S. From the Santa Lucia train station, the Vaporetto public boat takes visitors and locals to St. Mark's Square. Since the Middle Ages, boats have plied the canal, along which were initially located mills activated by the tides, as well as silk and wool manufacturers and the old arsenals of the Republic. As it was gradually transformed into a residential area, the largest palaces of the noble Venetian families were built along its length, many of which have been converted today into luxury hotels, museums, and institutions. The highly ornate entrances to the sumptuous palaces face onto the water. Castello neighborhood can be found on the eastern part of the city and includes Venice's entire tail up to the Arsenal. The Arsenal had already become the heart of the Venetian naval industry by the early years of the 12th century, when the Doge established a naval shipyard near St. Mark's Square. For centuries, the Arsenal remained closely linked to the Republic's prosperity. The pedestrian entrance, with its 4 marble lions brought from Greece at the end of the 1600s, is appropriately known as the Lion's Gate. The railings are adorned with 8 allegorical statues representing abundance, vigilance, justice, as well as the goddess Bellona, Neptune, and Mars. The historic center of Venice is made up of an infinite number of islets and canals, forming what is basically one large island. It is divided into 6 districts called sestieri. Around this heart lie other islands which are also part of the city, as well as the other Venice, its mainland sibling, Mestre. Castello is the most extensive of the 6 sestieri of central Venice, covering the long eastern part of the city. In this district is one of the most important of Venice's scuole, or religious confraternities. The scuole existed for the purposes of religious self-improvement, charitable deeds, and general fellowship. Scuole grandi were large all-male confraternities whose membership was drawn from the upper and middle classes across the entire city. The Renaissance Scuola Grande di San Marco in the Castello neighborhood was one of the largest and wealthiest of Venice's confraternities. The huge, unfinished brick facade of the west side of the Basilica of Saints John and Paul contrasts with the elegance of the decorated facade of the adjoining Scuola Grande di San Marco. The basilica is in the Gothic style and represents a feat of construction that took place over 200 years, between the 13th and 15th centuries. The Campo dei Mori is located in the northern Cannaregio district. Although Mori is the plural of the Italian Moro, meaning Moor, the Campo dei Mori was not formerly inhabited by North Africans, but by the Mastelli brothers, Rioba, Sandi, and Afani, who were from Morea in the Peloponnese, and who settled in Venice during the 12th century. type of construction typical of medieval Venice was a fondaco, a sort of warehouse that also served as lodging for foreign merchants during their stays in Venice. The city is crisscrossed by dozens of canals, along which moves a constant traffic of gondolas and other craft. Residents and fishermen moor their boats in the small port. Distance from the historical city lies the Venice of the Lagoon and its islands. It is a Venice where nature dominates, but where traces of history recount the very origins of the city, its furthest past. The ferryboat is the ideal means of getting to the islands. The lagoon is a complex and diverse world, an expanse of water that contains mysterious and unique features that are fully known only by the fishermen, the lagoon's inhabitants. Numerous islands, big and small, make this ecosystem one of a kind. The lagoon is a wide expanse of water and half-submerged land, where the landscape changes with the ebb and flow of the tide. Traditional boats can always be found on its waters, whose colors mix with those of the sky, land, and those of the buildings of the city. Venetian island of Murano has been home to Venice's glass-making industry since 1291. Glass manufacturing at the artisan level has not changed with the passage of time. Its unique shapes are created by blowing the glass by mouth, following Murano's ancient traditions. No more advanced techniques have been invented beyond the pipe used to blow glass. The result depends above all upon the skill and artistic taste of the artisan glassmaker. The origins of the glass-making arts in Venice date back before the end of the first millennium. Archaeological excavations have brought to light fragments indicating the presence of such activity on the island of Murano as early as the 7th century AD. Out of Murano's furnaces came every kind of glass product, which were prized all over Europe for their extreme refinement. Their beauty was such that they were immortalized in the works of the greatest Venetian artists. Today, the island of Murano is an important tourist attraction for those visiting the Venice area. The Church of Saints Mary and Donatus of Murano is an important site of worship and one of the lagoon's finest examples of Romanesque architecture. On the exterior, the arched loggias and the double band decorated with triangles participate in exalting the contrast in color between the red brick and the white marble. Another important island in the lagoon is Burano, a typical fishing community built on four of the lagoon's small islands which are connected to each other by bridges. The main features of the island is its multicolored houses, a tradition that may have arisen as a response to the area's humid and misty climate, dense with the fog so common to the lagoon. Another explanation is that the different colors of the houses, which have by now become the characteristic feature of the island, once served to delimit properties. The white squares of doors and windows stand out against the house's colored walls, while sheets hung out to dry flutter in the wind. The small island seems to have preserved its rhythms and traditions untouched by time. Burano's particular atmosphere comes from the uniqueness of its setting, from the intimate connection between its inhabitants and the lagoon. Commercial fishing activity and of course that of tourism, the island's economy is linked above all to the extremely ancient tradition of lace making. Galuppi Square with its shops where the art of lace making can be watched. In Venice, lace making began to be practiced during the Renaissance. It was initially the pastime of noblewomen, and then expanded to the other social classes. Lace making requires more than 6 distinct steps that usually were and still are carried out by different people. Historically, lace appeared in Venice in the 15th century and is first documented in a painting by Carpaccio. The extraordinary cultural wealth of Venice and its lagoon has been preserved over the centuries in its sumptuous palaces and monuments, and the traditions of its canals and islands.